여러분 안녕하십니까? 뉴스매거진의 박원정입니다. 오늘은 특별 대담으로 준비했습니다. 돌드 연방하원의원을 스튜디오에 모셨습니다. 영어로 대담을 진행하니 여러분께서 양해해 주시기 바랍니다. Welcome to 뉴스매거진, Congressman.
Well, it's great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
In Korean we say 안녕하세요. So today's July 4th. What does July 4th mean to you?
Well, on July 4th, it's Independence Day, and so as much as it means about families getting together to celebrate the independence of our country, it's an opportunity for us to reflect upon all of those that have come before us to sacrifice to give us the very freedoms that we enjoy today. And so it's a very special day for all of us here, not just for those that are in our country, but those that have emigrated to our country here that are now Americans. We are a proud nation of immigrants, and so as we celebrate today, it's about being independent and about enjoying the freedoms that freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and all those things that we all hold so dear.
Definitely. Lately, such a hot weather. How are you enjoying summer 2012?
It's been very warm lately, and so my kids certainly are enjoying it. They're spending a lot of time down at the lakefront and trying to spend as much time jumping through sprinklers and other things like that, but we're just keeping our head down and just going out and talking to people, and it's been very warm.
You also spend a lot of time at Washington, D.C., right?
Absolutely.
So like how many days per month?
Well, I think generally we're looking in Washington about Monday to Thursday, or sometimes Tuesday to Friday, sometimes Monday to Friday, but we try to get back each weekend, spend time with the family, and to go out and see voters and talk to them about some of the issues and concerns that they have and what's been happening in Washington, D.C. as well.
A lot of traveling, huh?
There's a lot of travel, no question about it.
Just like hot weather, what are some hot agenda as you're representing 10th District of Illinois?
Well, I think the hottest issue, and the one that I talk to my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and say, what's the number one issue that faces them? It's jobs in the economy.
Right.
It's certainly the number one issue in the 10th District also. And so I think that what we've got to be doing is focusing in, and what Washington needs to do is focusing on how do we create an environment that enables entrepreneurs and job creators, innovators all across the country to be able to have the confidence and the certainty to invest in their business and grow. And so we've got 29 million small businesses in our country, and from my perspective, the thing that Washington can do is create that environment that enables half of those businesses to hire a single individual.
10th District covers the north side of Chicago, right?
It actually currently starts...
Suburb, yeah.
It's the northern suburbs,
right.
And we'll be going further north in this next, because of redistricting, it'll go further north and northwest as well.
I bet your district has a really strong interest in small businesses growth and economy growth. And what are something that you are working on in regard to that matter?
There's a number of things that I'm working on right now. So we can talk about comprehensive tax reform, trade, which is so very, very important, manufacturing, STEM education. But one of the bills that I'm excited about, that it's a bipartisan bill that I'm an original co-sponsor of lately, is called Startup 2.0. And we educate the best and the brightest in our nation. So people from all over the world come here to the United States. And as soon as they graduate with a PhD or a master's degree, one of the first things that we do is send them home. What they might want to do is stay here. We want to encourage them to stay here, to innovate here, to create new businesses and patents and things that will create more jobs here in our country. And we want to give them the opportunity to do that. Startup 2.0 not only does that, it gives an opportunity for those from foreign countries that want to come to our country and invest in starting a business to be able to do so as well. So this really tries to address an issue to try to say, how do we create that environment here? How do we create more of an incentive for people to come to the United States and invest and grow here?
Is there anything that program that you're working on for small businesses?
Working on stuff for small businesses each and every day. Comprehensive tax reform is certainly one of those things. Access to capital for job creators. When we look at small businesses, there's a lot of manufacturing out there that is small manufacturing, and we talk about STEM education. And so when I talk to a lot of these individuals and a lot of these businesses, they say, I don't have, in essence, I can't find the individuals to fill the roles that I've got available today. STEM education is going to be one of the things that I think is going to help them be able to help our schools be able to prepare students to take jobs in the 21st century. And so there are a number of things that we're working on right now those being certainly some of the top. But almost everything that I've done to date has been with bipartisan support, which I think is the only way that we're going to really move things forward. Now, Juan, you and I can sit down and talk, and I guarantee we can find something that we disagree about.
All right.
But I'd much prefer to talk about the things that we agree about. And so in trying to talk to other legislators to say, what is it that we agree on so that we can move things forward? Because I'm a small business owner. And it's frustrating for me to go to Washington and take time away from my family and my business and not get things accomplished for the American public.
So 10th District has such a diverse ethnicity, and there's a high population of Koreans. What are something that you've worked with a Korean American community?
We've worked with the Korean American community regularly. In fact, I've got a Korean American advisory board that has been instrumental in helping me not only with issues and legislative stuff in Washington, but if we take a look at the Korean American community, they're focused on many of the same things that a lot of the Americans are. A lot of small business owners, people that are working hard trying to make sure that they can send their children to school, that they can have a roof over their head, or they're trying to make sure that they can allow their businesses to grow. One of the things that was certainly instrumental early on with the Korean American community was talking about trade, something that I'm on the trade working group. And so when the President came and addressed a joint session of Congress and said, this is my jobs plan, as opposed to dismissing the jobs plan, I said, what areas of the jobs plan is it that we agree with? One of those things that the President talked about is trying to double exports by 2014. One of the ways that we can do that is by trade agreements, the top of that list being with our good friends and allies in South Korea. That agreement alone is going to add $10 billion to our GDP in the first year alone, because 73% of the purchasing power is outside of the United States. 95% of the consumers are outside of the United States. We want to be able to sell American all over the globe, and certainly by utilizing our good friends in South Korea, that's going to be an opportunity for us to level the playing field for the American worker so that we can start moving things forward here.
Yeah, I agree. You also reflected Korean American community's interests on Korean Culture Center.
Absolutely.
Also EC naming.
Well, those are a couple of other, I think, really critical things. As we saw what happened in Wheeling with the Korean Cultural Center, it's really there not just for the Koreans, but for a host of others to try to talk about the diversity, talk about the culture, to educate people in our community, which I think makes our community a richer community. The other thing in talking with some of those in the Korean community, an issue came up about the naming of the East Sea, and how do we get it to be changed back to the East Sea. And one of the things that I'm pleased was able to do was try to help foster and facilitate a meeting between the leaders in the Korean American community from the greater Chicago area with folks in the United States State Department in Washington, D.C.
Right. You also recently had an art competition, and a Korean American student became the winner. Let's invite her in and talk a little bit about that.
That'd be fantastic.
Okay. Hi, Grace. Welcome to KBC.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
So, Congressman, tell us about Grace and her competition.
Well, Grace actually was one of the participants in the art competition that we have throughout the 10th District. And it's actually a national competition. And what happens is that high school students from all across the country will submit pieces of art that they've done. And what I do is we have artists come in and judge the competition. And so out of all the different submissions that came in through the 10th District, Grace and her submission was one that got first prize. So we were able to fly Grace out to Washington, D.C. With her mother.
Oh,
and
nice.
She had an opportunity to see her work of art basically that is downstairs with all the other winners from throughout the country that are put and hung in the United States Capitol, which is really a special thing for us to be able to do.
So how does it feel to be the winner?
It was a shock for me when I heard I was the winner, but it was a great opportunity for me because if I go to colleges, they'll recognize me for who I am, an artist, not some Korean girl who just wants an education. So it's an honor.
I have your work right here. It's very dynamic.
Yeah.
So what did you want to portray through this work?
Well, it was a school project that my teacher gave me, and I didn't really have an idea or something to portray throughout the image, but I always draw what I see, not what I have to imagine. So whatever is given to me, I just draw, and yeah.
So there's no particular message that you want to portray through this. It was something more spontaneity work.
Yeah, it was actually, because my friend gave me the opportunity to draw one of her photographs. So I accepted the challenge and I said, why not? It's a shoe. It couldn't be that hard, but I doubted myself.
So I guess you love art a lot.
Yeah.
Is there something that you want to do as a future profession?
A lot of people have asked me what I wanted to be when I'm a grown-up, but art, I haven't really thought of it as a career-wise because I don't want to be told, draw this by a certain time period. I want to draw it because I enjoy it. I don't want to be given the rules of what to draw. So it's just a hobby I want to keep in the future.
So Congressman, how does it feel to host this kind of contest that give opportunity for youngsters to experience many things?
It's fantastic, and to see the level of work that is submitted is absolutely fantastic. And so, I think one of the interesting things that caught my eye about Grace's piece is, when I looked at it, I said, wow, that's really spectacular. And then when she told me about how she actually did it, it's actually drawn with one big pen. And so it really just remarkable, the creativity and the talent that is in these young people today. And so, I would say to Grace, it doesn't have to be, you can actually draw whatever art you love, and people will most likely, if it's along this type of quality, people will buy it. And so it doesn't have to be a contract artist, but you could, in essence, be an artist and have a gallery, and that's really spectacular, spectacular piece.
To be truthful, first I thought this was photograph. I didn't know it was drawn by a pen. That's fabulous. So as a high school student, is there something that you wish Congressman to do for education, students, etc.?
Well, in general, like today, college and universities, the payment is very high from back in the days. So for a student like me and other students who are interested in science, math, and art, what will you do to make it accessible for us students to be able to go to college? I know scholarships nowadays are more being involved with the community, but a lot of students have other things to do, so how can you make it accessible to go to college?
Tough question.
No, listen, it's a great question. Because I'm hearing from people all the time, how am I going to be able to afford to go to school? And what I'll say is that there's no question that whether it be Perkins loans or other grants that we can be able to try to provide and make sure that it's accessible and available for students to be able to achieve their dreams, because education is literally going to be the building blocks for everything that we want to do, everything that we want to accomplish in our country, and not just in our country, around the world, relies upon education. And so what I will say is I think that we need to be preparing not just for higher education, but everybody throughout the system, so that we're preparing students to take jobs in the 21st century. But that does mean that we're going to have to make sure that we're leaning upon our community colleges. It's going to mean that we're going to make sure that we've got opportunities for students to go to higher education should they want to do so. And that is going to mean access in terms of loans, and make sure that some of those other grants are available as well.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So Grace, congratulations one more time, and thank you for spending time with News Magazine.
Thank you.
Great. The children and education is priority of our community and the nation. Yesterday, Illinois Governor Pat Quinn expressed unhappiness about budget cut in Children and Family Department of State of Illinois. And how is Congress doing to improve national education matter?
I think the biggest thing that Congress is doing, and we just talked not too long ago about, making sure that we're giving students an opportunity to go on to higher education with Perkins loans, Pell Grants, and others. But I think the biggest thing that Congress is doing right now is talking about the reauthorization of ESEA. So that's the Elementary Secondary Education Act. And so whether it was what it was known as before as No Child Left Behind, and I think that certainly we found that there is a number of issues with regard to No Child Left Behind that need to be rectified. And so what we don't want to do is basically teach towards a test, because what they do with the current system is they'll take a snapshot in time and test you, for instance, as you're coming into the 4th grade. And I can tell you that just from my own experience between my daughter and my son, they could have the same teacher, and then the 4th grade when they're being testing, they're going to have vastly different scores. Right. And so does that mean the teachers got better or worse? No. And so what I want to make sure that we're doing is we're talking about how do we talk about growth model assessments and reauthorize the act so that we're giving more flexibility to the local communities and the local school boards to be able to impact the local school system as best as they see fit. And so those are some of the things that we're seeing go through the Congress right now. The Senate's working on it, House is doing it in pieces, but those are going to be some of the big things that we need to see happen in terms of the reauthorization of the ESEA is first and foremost.
I see. Also, what is your stance in regard to President Obama halts deportation for young undocumented immigrants?
Well, what I would say with regard to that is, and what I've said before, is that I've said that the DREAM Act, which would be in essence talking about having those students that were brought here in essence by their parents before, I think that's a step in the right direction. But I would prefer to have it be done in a long-term issue done by the Congress as opposed to having it done just by executive order. I think that sets a dangerous precedent. But the basic gist of what we're talking about is we want to let an individual rest on their own merits, and we want to give them an opportunity to excel here in our country. And I think that that's a step in the right direction as we look at the DREAM Act.
What about your opinion in regards to recent Supreme Court's decision about health care?
Well, what I've said all along with regard to the Supreme Court in their role is that regardless of what the Supreme Court ruled, Congress was going to have to act because what the Affordable Care Act does is it talks about access to insurance. It does not address cost and quality. And as many know, as many small businesses and entrepreneurs know, they're wrestling with much higher taxes that are going to be instituted upon individuals, on small businesses that will wrestle with, am I going to be able to provide insurance to the people that I work with? And as a small business owner, certainly something that I struggle with. The law has certain aspects with the Independent Payment Advisory Board, which is, again, another 15 unelected bureaucrats that will make a determination on what can and can't be paid for in Medicare. And so there's a number of problematic things that are in the current law. And what the Supreme Court did is really rule on the constitutionality as opposed to, is this good policy? And so what I've said is that there are good aspects that are in the Affordable Care Act. Things like trying to make sure those with pre-existing conditions aren't denied simply because they have a pre-existing condition. What we want to prevent is someone going for insurance after they've had an automobile accident. Second thing is that with students today graduating that are 50% are either unemployed or underemployed, the idea that you can stay on your parents' insurance till you're 26, again, another positive step. But the more we take a look at what's going on with the Affordable Care Act, the more we realize that changes have to be made to really focus it more on a patient-centered healthcare system to drive down costs and make sure that the quality of care is improving.
Also, you are geared to more bipartisan agreement, right?
Absolutely. I think the only way that we're going to move forward for most things, and that's why most everything that I've done to date has been with bipartisan support. And by all independent analysis out there, whether it be GovTrax, Congressional Quarterly, National Journal, Washington Post, all have done an independent analysis of the votes over the last 18 months. Each and every one of them has identified me as one of the most independent members of the United States Congress. And I think that's a positive, because I believe we've got to work together.
I was told by a source that there's going to a vote happening on House of Representatives on July 11th in regard to this matter. What's your prospect?
Well, my prospect is that it will most likely, the July 11th vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act will most likely go through. It's already passed the House a couple of different times. It won't go through the United States Senate. And so, again, I think that if we want to be serious about how do we reform this, they're talking about repeal and replace. What I've said is let's talk about the replacement pieces and then repeal, so that people know that we're serious, that we need to have health care reform. And I think that we've got to talk about meaningful medical malpractice reform. We need to talk about making sure that there's no bureaucrat that comes in between a decision between yourself and your physician. If you're able to find insurance anywhere in the country that's better for you and your family, I think you should be able to purchase that insurance. Also, with the number of small businesses that are out there, being able to pool like businesses, other small businesses together to be able to increase your buying power is something that I think you should be able to do. And give tax parity to the individual as well as the business. So if the business is getting a tax break for health insurance, the individual should get that as well. So these are some things that I think that we need to be putting into place that I think make sense, that help drive costs down, and then will help us move forward with regard to health care.
I see. This is a personal question. Why did you want to be a congressman? Is it something that you dreamed when you were young?
No. For me, it was that I felt that the government was making it harder and harder for me to put the key in the door and open up my business each and every day. And we look at the amount of regulations that are out there that are making it harder for people to employ that next individual. And frankly, I think the government should be making it easier so that we can hire more people. That and the idea that the amount of money that we were spending, that was being spent in Washington by Republicans and Democrats alike, was going to jeopardize the future American dream of my 10-year-old, my 8-year-old, my 5-year-old. And so from that perspective, I said, this is the time, stand up and do something about it. And so I didn't run, for Congress to be the congressman. I ran for Congress in order to accomplish something because I have a job. And, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I run a small business. Those are the things that are most important, and I want to make sure that we're safeguarding those things for everyone, for all Americans going forward.
Well, tell us about yourself. Are you a native of Chicago?
Born and raised in the 10th District. So I was grew up, went to New Trier High School, and I went out to Washington, D.C., and I went to, first of all, I went to Ohio, a little school called Denison for undergrad. When I graduated from there, I went to Washington and worked in the first George Herbert Walker Bush administration. Then went to law school. I clerked for a New York State Supreme Court judge, worked for him for a little bit, and then a mid-sized firm in Chicago before going back to Washington, D.C. to work on the campaign finance investigation for the Government Reform and Oversight Committee, and then came back here to Illinois to go to business school at Northwestern. And then I worked for a telecommunications company for a little bit, and then actually came in and ran a business, the oldest pest management company in the country. Did that for about 7.5 years or so before running for Congress.
Wow, you went through a lot.
a lot of things were going on, but I think it gives me a good perspective.
Right.
And so having met a budget and a payroll and signed the front of a paycheck and understanding what people go through in order to create a job and keep them employed, I think is important. And I think we need more of that to go to Washington, D.C. and to go to Springfield to be able to help craft the laws and be able to make sure that we understand, that Washington understands what everyday Americans are going through in order to try to make sure that they've got a roof over their head, that they're able to send their children to school, that the next, that the American dream is alive and well for that next generation, which so many of us want.
I see. I was wondering what your near future plan is. Election is coming up, right?
Election is coming up, no question about it. And I guess the plan that I have is to get out and talk to as many of the people as possible about what's keeping them up at night, some of their concerns, and just letting them know about who I am and what I believe in and why I believe that I'm the best person for that job. And it's been the honor of my life to be able to represent the diverse area in 10th District, and it's one that I take very seriously.
Okay, Congressman, thank you for spending time with News Magazine.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Appreciate it too.
Real pleasure.
네, 뉴스 매거진 특별 대담. 오늘은 밥 돌드 연방하원의원과 함께했습니다. 밥 돌드 의원에 대한 자세한 내용은 아래 홈페이지를 참고하시기 바랍니다. 편안한 7월 4일 독립기념일 밤 되시기 바랍니다. 다음 시간에 뵙겠습니다.